In a report from Mental Health America, a state ranking on depression, Ohio was listed as 43rd and Kentucky 49th in the nation.
Most Americans, I spend 8 hours a day at my job. That's a huge part of who I am and my identity. And I think that to ignore that piece from clients' lives is huge. It leaves a huge void that, that their illness, I guess, can take up, which is not what recovery is about, not what we would want. So I think that has been a really good part of the recovery movement. And it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago that I started to hear about recovery, and that word was tossed around and what that meant. And as an agency, we started to do a lot of trainings with staff on what recovery is and what it means and how it's different for all of our clients, but that the emphasis is on helping clients to recovery and be whoever you want to be, be all you can be kind of a thing. And I noticed a lot too, the change in, we talked a lot in sort of planning meetings and things about how the recovery philosophy really, it's a change in our culture of our service providers and the services that we provide.
For recovery to take place, the culture of mental health care must embrace a paradigm shift to a culture that is based on self-determination, empowering relationships, and full participation of the mental health consumers in the work and community life of society, with the elimination of stigma and discrimination.
Another service that we offer here at ICHRON is the Warm Line, which is another consumer-run operation, and they have around 30 employees, and most of the employees work out of their home, and they work 4-hour shifts, and it's open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and it's a warm line where people can call in, individuals with mental health issues, and just talk to someone. Talk to a warm voice, get something off their chest. It really helps reduce the need for crisis types of services in the community. By having this service available, individuals, when they are feeling a little bit more down than usual, or are feeling that they just need to connect with someone, they can call this number, the Warm Line, and talk to a person that will help them work through maybe an issue they're dealing with. And again, consumer operated, and it's been around since the 90s. And again, it's just a consumer-run service that shows that individuals with mental health issues can run businesses and work jobs just like anyone else.
Depression is one of the most common mental illnesses and tends to affect people in their prime working years. But more than 80% of people with clinical depression can be successfully treated. With early recognition, intervention, and support, most employees can overcome their clinical depression and pick up where they left off.
We did a lot of education with the employer, which I think helped a lot. I think that's needed. No longer are we just trying to maintain a client in an apartment that has, they have food and they have a roof over their head, and so they're good. We can just sort of, as long as we can keep them there, keep them out of the hospital, then that's great. And started talking more about, well, what else, what does the client want? What do they want in their lives? What are their hopes and their dreams and their aspirations, and how can we help them to move beyond having an apartment and having food in the pantry?
Holistic. Recovery encompasses an individual's whole life, including mind, body, spirit, and community.
Well, mental illness is not a spiritual problem, like a lot of people try to make it up to be. In fact, a lot of pastors that I know, they see it as a spiritual problem. I don't see it as a spiritual problem. I've never thought of, if a person had a heart attack or heart condition or had cancer, that was a spiritual problem. It's funny, I have a terminal illness right now, and if you hadn't guessed when I was talking, but all that was nothing hard when it came to this because of all that. This is a piece of cake.
I guess my baby, in a way, has been the Mental Health Coalition. I was one of the founding mothers was actually started out of Northern Kentucky from the Mental Health Association, and they got a group together in 1982, April of 1982, and said, we'd be more effective as a mental health lobby if we came to Frankfort with a organized, unified message. When Molly Klaus testified in 2000 on the Mental Health Parity Bill and told her story about actually being put out of the hospital on several occasions and eventually losing her job, a very promising career as a teacher in Jefferson County, because of her mental illness and because of the discrimination that insurance company had against people with mental illness, that they were not treated the same as people that had a diabetic condition and needed to be hospitalized, or a cancerous condition and needed to be hospitalized. And we were in a hearing room not unlike this, and you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, people were crying to hear that testimony, and I think Molly was probably the first of the consumers to really bridge that gap and really take that step forward. And Jim Daly, who was so active in NAMI at the time, telling his story about his son and their struggles as a family. And it was really that team that passed a bill that everybody said we could not pass, and that was House Bill 268. And our motto was HB 268, do not discriminate. And we really stuck it to the insurers, if you will, because the insurance companies had systemic discrimination against mental illness and substance abuse disorders. And I think in all the years that I've been coming up here in the legislation and so forth, that was probably, certainly for me, the most emotional, but certainly the proudest moment, not because I did it, but because it was done by the people that were most affected by it. What is recovery? Recovery is believing that you make a difference and that you are somebody and that you are worth caring about. It really is believing in the power of yourself despite a diagnosis, despite the problems that you've had. And I think recovery is empowerment, and it is hope. And it's learning some skills. And to me, this is an advocacy skill that carries over, whether it's fighting to make sure your insurer does what they're supposed to do, or that your provider does what they're supposed to do, or that you get satisfaction when your cable doesn't work, or whatever the issue is. We all have to learn to stick up for ourselves. And in part, people have a hard time doing that unless they really believe in themselves. And I think that's part of recovery. We try to say, these are people. These are not numbers. These are not statistics. These are not, budget figures. These are not waiting lists. These are not, whatever. These are people, and they have the same kinds of desires and wants and hopes that we all have, and we're going to put that face on it. And I can't do that. All I can do is to help consumers and family members kind of know their way through the labyrinth and help them anticipate what's going to happen. And I can help prepare legislators and staff and the governor's folks and the media in terms of here's what we're going to try to do and so forth. And then I just step back and, let people do it because they do it very well. I don't think I've ever been disappointed in any of the events that we've put on or anything that people came up. When they speak from the heart, you can't be disappointed about that. And I think when people speak from the heart, then they are their own best advocate. And I think that's what recovery is all about.